I still remember that chilly November morning. I was sitting by the window, a cup of tea in my hands, watching the leaves fall in slow circles. My son, Daniel, called from the city. His voice was calm, but there was something different in his tone, excitement mixed with hesitation. "Mom, I have something to tell you," he said. I smiled. "What is it, Danny? You sound like you just won the lottery." He laughed softly. "Not exactly. I met someone. Her name is Clara." My heart skipped a beat. My only son, the one I raised alone after losing my husband, was finally in love. "She's smart, beautiful, kind. Mom, I think she's the one." I was happy for him. I truly was. But as I listened, a little ache formed in my chest. Every mother dreams of seeing her child start his own family, but the thought of sharing him, of not being the center of his little world anymore, stung more than I expected. After a few weeks, he called again. "Mom, Clara's parents invited us for dinner next Saturday. They want to meet you." I smiled, even though my heart raced. I hadn't met them yet, but I'd heard they were from a wealthy family, old money, big business. People who lived in gated communities, who measured respect by the brand of your clothes. "I'll be there," I said. "Just tell me what time." What I didn't tell him was that I'd already decided how I'd appear that night, not as the successful woman who owned her own real estate business, but as the simple widow everyone once pitied. I wanted to see who they really were, and how they'd treat someone they believed was beneath them. The night arrived faster than I'd expected. I wore a modest blue dress, the same one I'd worn to church for years. I left my diamond earrings in their box and chose small silver studs instead. I carried a simple purse, not the leather designer one I usually took to meetings, but the old fabric one I'd had since before Daniel graduated college. When I arrived at the mansion, a tall man in a suit opened the door. His eyes flicked from my worn shoes to my purse, and he smiled politely, the kind of smile that hides quiet judgment. "Mrs. Sullivan?" he asked. "Yes, that's me." "This way, please." The dining room sparkled with gold accents and glass chandeliers. Clara's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Richmond, stood near the table. They were elegant, perfectly pressed clothes, diamonds that caught the light. "Good evening," I said warmly. Mrs. Richmond's smile was thin, forced. Her eyes traveled over my dress. "Oh, you must be Daniel's mother. So lovely to meet you." Her tone was sweet, but distant. Mr. Richmond shook my hand lightly and said, "Please, have a seat." As dinner began, I tried to join their conversation. They spoke about their vacations in Europe, their daughter's charity work, and the high-end schools they supported. When they finally turned to me, Mrs. Richmond asked, "And what do you do, Mrs. Sullivan?" "I run a small business," I replied. "Oh," she said, raising an eyebrow. "What kind?" "Real estate," I answered. "Real estate," she repeated, almost surprised. "That's nice. So you help people find homes?" "Yes," I said with a calm smile. "Something like that." I could feel the quiet condescension in her tone. To her, I was just a small-town agent, a woman probably living on old savings. At one point, Clara's younger sister leaned over and whispered loudly, "She looks so humble." I didn't expect that. The table went silent for a moment. I smiled and pretended not to hear. Throughout dinner, I stayed polite, kind, and quiet. When dessert came, I offered to help serve. Mrs. Richmond looked surprised, perhaps even amused, but she let me. As I carried plates to the table, she said softly to her husband, "She's so simple. But maybe that's good for Daniel. He needs grounding." My chest tightened, but I didn't react. I had come here to observe, not to argue. By the time I left, Mrs. Richmond said, "You're welcome to visit anytime, Mrs. Sullivan. It's been delightful." Delightful. I could tell she didn't mean it. But I smiled anyway and said, "Thank you, Mrs. Richmond. I'll look forward to seeing you again." As I stepped into the cool night, I whispered to myself, one day, you'll see who I really am. A few weeks passed, and Daniel called again. Mom, Clara's family offered to host the wedding at their estate. They're covering most of the expenses, he said. That's generous, I replied softly. Yeah, they're really particular about everything. Clara said her mom wants a certain image. I smiled. Of course she does. When I arrived for the first family meeting about the wedding, the tone was the same, polite, but cold. Mrs. Richmond talked about floral arrangements, tablecloth colors, and seating charts as if she were managing a royal banquet. I just listened quietly, nodding when she addressed me. At one point, she said, Mrs. Sullivan, we've arranged a small table for your side of the family, we hope that's all right? That's perfectly fine, I replied. Good, she said. We just want everything balanced. Balanced. That word lingered in my mind long after I went home. I knew they saw me as someone small, someone lucky their daughter even considered my son. But what they didn't know was that my small business wasn't small at all. I owned 3 apartment buildings, managed properties across the state, and quietly employed more than 40 people. I had never flaunted my success because I'd learned long ago that true class isn't loud. Still, their arrogance stung. And as the wedding day approached, a part of me wanted to reveal the truth, not to show off, but to remind them that respect should never depend on wealth. So I waited, patiently, for the right moment. It was a bright Sunday morning when Clara and Daniel invited her parents to our home, my home. They thought it would be a small brunch. They didn't know what they were walking into. As their car entered the long driveway, I watched from the balcony. The Richmonds stepped out, looking around in confusion. The house, my mansion, gleamed in the morning sun. The garden stretched wide, fountains sparkling, and the air smelled of roses. Mrs. Richmond clutched her pearls. Daniel, whose house is this? He smiled gently. It's Mom's. Her lips parted in disbelief. Your mother's? I walked down the stairs, dressed simply, but this time I didn't hide who I was. I extended my hand and said warmly, Welcome to my home, Mr. and Mrs. Richmond. Mrs. Richmond's face turned pale. She blinked, speechless. But I thought that I was poor. I asked softly. That I needed your approval to belong? Silence fell between us. The air felt heavy. I didn't lie to you, I continued. I just wanted to see how you'd treat me, not for my money, not for my title, but for who I am. Mr. Richmond lowered his head, ashamed. Mrs. Richmond's voice trembled. Mrs. Sullivan. I'm so sorry. I misjudged you terribly. I smiled, my eyes misty. It's all right. Sometimes we need to see the world from the bottom to understand what truly matters at the top. She wiped a tear and whispered, You're a remarkable woman. I shook my head. No. I'm just a mother who learned that humility doesn't mean weakness, and kindness isn't foolishness. True strength is staying gentle in a world that teaches us to look down on others. Clara came forward, her eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry too, Mom. I should have defended her. I pulled her into a hug. You don't owe me an apology, dear. You owe me love, and that's enough. As the sun streamed through the windows, laughter slowly returned to the room. We shared breakfast like family, not rich or poor, not superior or inferior, just human. And for the first time, Mrs. Richmond raised her glass and said, To Mrs. Sullivan, the most graceful woman I've ever met. I smiled and whispered, To respect, the only thing money can't buy.